Hello guys, ghouls and gals, and welcome back to the archives. I'm your host, Nick Nightmare, and today we'll be diving back into the realm of Dead by Daylight. And once again, we'll be looking into the stories of two of the killers within the entity's realm, a lethal forest dweller and the soldiers of mayhem themselves. These are the stories of the Huntress and the Legion. Let's dive right in with the melodic killer herself. The Huntress is a simple to learn but difficult to master killer. Her power can be summed up in two words: throwing axes. She throws axes. While this may seem as simple as it gets, one would be surprised. Huntress mains who take the time to master her skill are unstoppable monsters, not unlike the Huntress herself. That being said, who really is the Huntress? Anna was raised in the northern woods by her mother, being taught how to survive the harsh life of solitude her mother had adopted for them from the moment Anna could walk. Her father was gone, butchered by a group of Russian soldiers. They would hunt through the day, and when the light could no longer break through the thick canopy of the trees, they would return home for the night, a sturdy cabin designed to withstand even the harshest winters. Anna would drift to sleep in her mother's arms, listening to the grand stories weaved by her mother, as well as her calm, soothing lullaby. Anna could never have known the trials that awaited her. One fateful night, during their daily hunt, Anna and her mother were tracking down and stalking a great elk. They were desperate. Winter had been especially merciless this year, leaving them with nothing in terms of food. Suddenly, without warning, the elk charged towards Anna in a fit of rage. Anna couldn't bring herself to move, frozen with fear. Her mother threw herself in front of the elk, axe in hand and screaming at the top of her lungs. The elk pierced her mother's chest, taking her off her feet. In retaliation, her mother cracked the elk's skull with her axe, causing its antlers to break off, freeing her, but not before it was too late. Anna wasn't strong enough to move her mother's crippled body. Her mother, in an attempt to distract her from the cries of the dying elk, held Anna close to her one last time, humming Anna's favorite lullaby. The elk's cries began to slowly fade, as did her mother's, leaving Anna alone, no melody to keep her company anymore. Anna was forced to learn how to survive on her own, abandoning her humanity and becoming the most feared predator in the forest, expanding her hunting grounds and working her way up the food chain. She grew tired of her normal prey, instead choosing to hunt down more dangerous beasts, such as wolves and bears. This was not enough, though. A new prey became Anna's preferred hunt: humans. Those unfortunate enough to wander into the Red Forest were quickly slaughtered like animals. She would collect their personal belongings, the garments they wore, and their children. The little girls who were traveling with their families through the woods were spared from being put down like a common pack animal, but their fate was no better. They were instead captured by the Huntress and taken to her home to be raised as if they were her own. Huntress craved the closeness of a young one of her own, so she would keep them inside of her home, bringing them home toys and books that she herself could not read, and keeping them inside by the neck by a rope connected to the wall. After all, the children couldn't wander out on their own. They would surely perish in the woods. However, with each child the Huntress kept, each one of them slowly withered away and died from the cold, starvation, or sickness. It began to drive Anna to madness, the pain and anguish she felt eventually taking what was left of Anna's sanity. She needed to try again, needed to get it right. The odd child wandering into the forest wasn't enough anymore. Anna began raiding nearby villages, killing the villagers that once lived there and making off with their daughters, all adorned by the animal masks her mother had crafted for her when she was young, in an attempt to calm the nerves of the frightened children. Word spread of Anna and her ventures, stories of a half-beast lurking within the Red Forest, the Huntress. War found its way to the forest. German and Russian soldiers alike wandered into the Huntress's domain. She witnessed their little war with great fascination, laughing at their foolishness. Human animals. They were worse than the ravenous wolves that roamed these woods. She watched as they carelessly butchered a horse in disgust, wasting more meat than necessary due to their carelessness. Once they are through eating, the Russians grab one of the foreign prisoners, crushing his head to pass the time. Anna sits and critiques their form. It's awkward and messy, nothing like her mother taught. During one of Anna's nightly hunts for another pack of the human animals, she catches sight of something. A gift. The perfect gift for her newly acquired daughter, her little Bushka. She watches the soldier carving the toy as he guards and curses out the prisoners he's watching. Her mother's books had once called these men soldiers. These were the men that had slaughtered her father. Her mother never could explain why these men kill each other. Anna watches these men trying, but ultimately failing to understand why they fight, just like her mother. Maybe they like the hunt. Anna can't take her eyes off the gift, as she wants to give these men their own little war. But she can't help but hear her mother's voice, telling her she'll need to thin the herd. Anna can do that. Anna watches as some Russian soldiers take one of their prisoners and do something peculiar to him. They tie his ankles to a gnarled branch and light a fire beneath him. She watches on confused, knowing you're supposed to kill the game before you cook it. But they enjoy his screams. Anna recognizes this prisoner too. Not too long before, he had been the torturer, doing the same thing with Russian prisoners. One of the soldiers still has the perfect gift in his hands while the man screams like a common pack animal. Anna fights laughter. The sound is absolutely ridiculous. She's startled by the sound of an approaching soldier, snapping her head to spot a small, scrawny man with a bayonet in hand, rushing her. She dodges out of the way of the weapon and grips the man's Adam's apple, yanking it out with great force. The man collapses, choking on his own cries of pain. Anna returns her attention to the soldiers as they continue to laugh at the squealing prisoner. They'll all be making similar sounds soon. Anna begins to thin the herd. Russian soldiers begin to notice their missing comrade searching the area. She begins to strategically pick off the men one by one. She snaps a twig, drawing one man to turn his head, Anna splitting it in two before he can even meet her gaze. She searches him for the perfect gift, but the search comes back fruitless. She releases the man's mouth, allowing the gurgling screams to draw the other three soldiers near. As they approach, weapons in hand and at the ready, Anna rolls their comrade's head toward them. The men pause in shock, and it's all Anna needs. She takes the first two soldiers down in one sweep of her axe. The last rushes towards her to attack, but she takes his head clean off in a single swing. The body lurches back and forth, as if trying to reunite with its lost head. The sound of another attacker catches Anna's attention. She wheels around and swings left and right, the body collapsing in pieces. The soldier looking around at the falling pieces of his body in terror. Anna can't help but think of a story her mother used to tell. Sorry, Yaitso. Can't be put back together again. As time passes, the story of a monster in the woods makes its way through the soldiers' camps. They are no longer killing each other, instead working together to survive the supposed Bodark in the woods. They dig pits and sabotage their own bases in order to fortify themselves against her. Anna begins toying with her prey, approaching the camps at night to sing her lullaby, before howling like a Bodark and returning home for the rest of the night, depriving the soldiers from sleep, eventually causing them to fight amongst themselves. Eventually, the war ended. The stories of the Bodark that hid in the woods, slaughtering men and devouring little girls, faded, as the Huntress was no longer anywhere to be found. That is where the Huntress's story ends. But we are not done yet, my friends, no. We are only beginning, as we continue on to the next killer in this tome, the Legion. The Legion is another simple-to-grasp killer, with a power that has a relatively low skill ceiling. When the Legion's ability is ready, he can activate something called Feral Frenzy. This ability allows the Legion to become faster at the cost of no longer being able to see scratch marks. However, when you attack a survivor, you place them into the deep wound status and gain killer instinct on any other survivors nearby. If you are able to chain 4 feral frenzy hits together, the 5th hit will put the final survivor into the dying state, no matter what the current health state of the survivor is. But who are the members of the Legion? Frank Morrison was an orphan child, taken away from his home city of Calgary to begin his run through the foster home system. He moved from home to home, always seeming to move just when he got comfortable. His final move was with a man named Clive Andrews into the city of Ormond, a small, quiet town in the mountains, covered by snow for the better part of the year. Frank tried his hardest to get himself moved once again, to get out of this boring, quiet town. That is, until he spotted a beautiful girl at a local diner, Julie Kostenko, and Julie had noticed him too. Frank decided to strike up a conversation with her. "So, you an artist or something?" he asked, noticing the sketchbook in front of her. "Artist? Hardly. I doodle to escape the banality of Ormond." Frank looks closer at the sketchbook and notices a familiar-looking drawing. "That me?" he asks. Julie's face grows hot. She knew before he even told her that he wasn't from around here. He looks different than the common Ormond resident. He looks fun, free, rebellious. He sits at her table and offers to model for her as a joke. They both share a long, stretching stare before Julie decides to invite Frank to a party she's throwing for her friends. They're celebrating for a friend of hers that just lost his job. Joey can never seem to keep a job. Frank laughs. Joey sounds fairly normal to him. It takes a lot of programming to get the average man to accept the 8-hour grind. He begins to rant about the corruption of the education system, if you could even call it that. If it were true education, they'd be teaching philosophy and critical thinking. No. The education system was nothing more than brainwashing. Julie laughs, knowing her friends will love this charming iconoclast. After all, she surely did. Julie couldn't get Frank out of her head. She hoped he showed up for the party. His little speech had stuck with her, prompting her to do some research of her own. She learned the entire education system was made to prepare workers for the assembly line. Nothing has changed since, except for the products being assembled. Frank eventually shows up to the party with what he calls party favors, drugs and booze. Julie introduces him to her friends, Joey and Susie. They talk favorite foods, slasher movies, serial killers till the night comes to an end. Julie and Frank show off their immense knowledge of serial killers, Julie leading Frank to her room to show off the scrapbooks she has filled with pictures and newspaper clippings of famous killers. While everyone else leaves or passes out, Julie and Frank go back and forth, challenging each other's serial killer knowledge. Finally, Julie stumps Frank with a local story about an abandoned cabin that houses the Soldiers of Mayhem. Frank calls bullshit. He's done his research, knows there's no such thing, only bad business and bankruptcy in Ormond. Julie laughs. This is not just any old story, she tells him. This is their future. Frank gives her a smirk. "I like the idea," he tells her, "but I hate the name." Julie shrugs it off. It's a work in progress. Julie and Frank begin to spend more time together. She feels alive. More than alive, she feels complete, finally, as she finally learns who Frank really is. He is not just iconoclast rebel, learning that, like her, he just likes to start arguments just for fun. His satisfaction is derived from smashing others' beliefs and watching as they unravel. Not just any people. Ugly people, as Frank called them. Entitled preps and politicians who couldn't fathom anyone would dare to challenge their beliefs. Julie hands Frank a ski mask and proposes a little game. Whoever stole the most car emblems by the end of the night wins. Win what? Frank inquires. Julie approaches him and whispers, "Whatever the winner wants." They both throw on their masks and begin searching the snow-covered streets for cars. Julie is more than in love. Julie feels a connection with Frank she's never felt before in her life. He is her spiritual twin. She confided with him for nights on end, letting him know her darkest desires, how often she wondered how it would feel to set the town on fire. Frank leans forward and tells her she can do whatever she wants, so long as she builds an image of what she wants in her mind. He begins to spout out his weed-induced theory of using your imagination to reshape the world. The more focus you on your desires, the faster it comes. They all sit in silence for a dramatic moment. Then, together, they all burst out laughing, cracking jokes about all of them just imagining buckets of money. Frank just shakes his head. Money inspires nothing. No. You have to imagine yourself doing whatever it is you want to do for the rest of your life. Julie smiles and begins to imagine her and her friends turning Ormond into their own personal playground. Julie and Frank now sit in the cabin, the only exciting place in Ormond, waiting for Joey and Susie to show up, Julie looking around at their new hangout spot. It needs some love. Joey and Susie arrive back from causing mayhem around Ormond, stop signs in hand. They laugh about the accidents they had caused. They'd even taken pictures of some of the injuries they'd caused. Joey tells the group of his new job, prompting them to begin making bets of how long he'll last this time. Julie takes note of the space they've chosen, coming up with a vision of it in her mind. She wanted to decorate the halls with car emblems they had snatched. Joey wanted to hang the stop signs on the wall. Julie comes up with another name for the group, the Marauders of Mayhem. Frank shakes his head in disapproval. Too tough on the tongue. Joey likes the name. All of them turn to Susie for the final call. She shrugs and hesitantly agrees with Frank. It is a mouthful. Julie, Susie, and Frank raid the hardware store Joey is working at. Joey tells them to be quick, as the owner will return soon. Frank tells them to stop panicking as they grab supplies for the cabin. A snow globe catches Frank's eye. Joey tries to get him to leave it, warning him it's his boss's collector's globe, but Frank snatches it anyways. Julie watches Frank snatch the globe and gets an idea. She begins grabbing some generic Ormond globes for a new project. The cabin begins shaping up to be a nice hangout space. All it needs are some finishing touches, some electronics to make the space cozier than the rest of Ormond. Julie stays behind, making the generic snow globes she had collected into their very own snow globes. Frank approaches and asks for one. Julie hands him a globe depicting a group of stickmen setting a snowman on fire. Frank critiques the snow globe, telling her it should have been a person. Julie is almost offended, telling him to look closer. He takes a closer look at the snowman and sees another stick figure inside. Nice. Julie imagines her and her friends killing someone for the first time. She sees herself in the papers, top of the headlines, making Ormond exciting again, finally with a series of murders. Her phone rings, startling her. When she picks up, she hears Frank on the other end. He wants her to meet him at the Ormond Majestic Theater. She asks him what's playing that day, but he doesn't answer. So she drives down to meet him there, seeing him graciously opening the door for her. She walks in to see Joey and Susie standing inside, holding empty gas canisters. Frank asks if she'll do the honors. She strikes a match, watching the fire flicker and almost extinguish in the cold Ormond wind. She flicks the match before it can extinguish, igniting a blazing inferno in the theater, the light reflecting off of the snow. Julie looks at the fire, at Frank, and at her friends with her. She thinks somehow Frank is right. The world is conspiring in her favor. The group continues to brainstorm a name for themselves. Susie suggests they don costumes like that of a superhero. Why, Julie asks. We trying to be famous? Why not? Frank shrugs. Julie laughs. After all, no one has ever become famous for petty theft and arson. Julie suggests they do something real. Frank asks her what that means. Something real. Julie goes quiet for a moment, pondering what she's even about to say. She wants the thrill she's always read about. She wants to be more than common, more than ordinary. She is no longer content with just being a sheep. Frank smiles, seeing the look on her face, and asks her if she could ever kill someone. She thinks for a moment. I could, she finally responds. Frank looks at her skeptically, before saying he doesn't think he could really ever kill someone. Julie teases him. Not even for me? Not even for you. And you? Would you kill for me? She laughs, mocking his response, echoing back, never. Frank laughs and begins mimicking her in return. Not even for me? Not even for you. The bet they had made finally has its result. Frank won. Joey couldn't even last a month at his new job. The owner had accused him of stealing a chocolate bar. Of all things, a chocolate bar he had never stolen. Julie suggests they get back at him, that they break into the store, grab some supplies, and vandalize the place. Hell, they'd set fire to the building, Let Ormond feel the wrath of the Legion. They all pause for a moment. Finally, Frank nods approvingly. I like it. I like it a lot. Julie throws him a plain, unimpressive mask. Now all they needed was to make it their own. They broke into the shop that night, began ransacking the place. They thought it was empty that night, but a cleaner who had not yet left the shop overheard the group. He grabbed Julie from behind. Frank, hearing her cries, rushes towards him in a feral frenzy, stabbing him square in the back. They all now take turns stabbing the man. The group rushes to hide the body, mopping up the blood and driving up the mountain to bury the body. The storm is bad on this night. While they're burying the body, Frank sees something moving in the fog. He begins to wander off the path, searching for whatever he had seen, but he finds nothing. When he tries to retrace his steps, he comes upon an unfamiliar path. The rest of the group tracks Frank's footsteps into the fog, getting lost in it themselves. Thus was the birth of the Legion. But this, unfortunately, is where our story ends. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, and click the bell icon to be notified when I upload. And with that, friends, I hope to see you all in the archives again soon. Goodbye for now.